I don't have time for you. I don't know who you are. Send him here. Hi, this is Senna. I'm afraid you have the wrong number. No problem. Shawnee. Hi there to anybody on watching this on YouTube. We will be starting this webinar at 6:30 p.m. Irish time. So in about 15 minutes. So plenty of time to go and get yourself a cup of tea. Until then, I will be updating every now and then. Thank you. Shawnee, Senan here. Just so you know, we are currently live on YouTube. That link was sent around to people. The Zoom room can only fit 100 people. So we're waiting for, so let me unmute you. There we go. Sorry about that.
How many are you expecting, do you think?
We have 140 people registered.
Yes, I didn't think we were that popular.
We are, Shawnee, but again, we're live on YouTube right now. So just be a little bit cautious.
That's right. I won't say anything out of the way.
But to anybody on YouTube right now, we'll be going live in about 15 minutes from now. Thank you.
I'll mute my end as well, so I will send it for the moment.
Perfect.
All right.
To anybody that is currently watching us on YouTube, this event is going to kick off at 6:30 p.m. Irish time sharp. So plenty of time to go and get yourself a cup of tea. We'll see you at 6:30 p.m. Thank you. Hi, Fiona. Senan here.
Hi, Senan. How are you?
I'm great. Just as a heads up, we are currently live on YouTube, so please be careful. But we'll be kicking off at 6:30 p.m. So we're good to go.
That's perfect. Thank you, Senan.
You're very welcome.
Good evening, Fiona. How are you?
Good evening, Shawnee. How are you?
Very nervous now.
There's no need to be.
There was no information from Senan that we're going to be live on YouTube or anything like that.
He saved the best till last.
Yeah, he definitely did.
It's the opportunity of a lifetime.
It's the technology is limiting. The Zoom account we have only permits 100 people in the Zoom room. So everybody that's 100 plus must watch on YouTube. And we've had 140 people register for this.
Oh, that's terrific.
It's great. And we're very grateful that for all the people that have registered. So at roughly 6:25, we have 3 people in the waiting room. So I'll be letting everybody into the room and we'll kick off at 6:30.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
What's the weather like in Limerick, Fiona?
It is absolutely glorious. Another beautiful day.
I didn't think I would be concerned about the lighting. There's an awful glare into the room, so I didn't think that would be an issue in Longford, but there you go.
Wow, so good weather again in Longford.
Yeah, fantastic. Now I can just hear the neighbours firing up the lawnmower, so.
Oh, terrific. It's the season for it.
It is, yeah, in April, who would have thought?
I know.
So this is just a message for anyone that's watching on YouTube. We will be kicking off in 10 minutes. So there's plenty of time to go get yourself a cup of tea and sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Thank you. Aidan, I will welcome you. This is Senan from IDA. Welcome to the team. Online we have Shawnee and Fiona. So the panel, the full panel is now here. But I would just give you a quick warning. We are currently live on YouTube and I can't pause that. So just note that there are people watching on YouTube. So we'll be kicking off in 9 minutes at 6:30 p.m. sharp.
Okay.
How are you doing, Aidan?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, can you hear me?
We can indeed, loud and clear.
Yeah.
Aidan, can you do a quick test for me?
Okay, yeah.
Can you share your screen? Is that possible?
Okay, share screen. Okay. Okay.
Excellent.
Is that good?
That's perfect. We have that now. So when Fiona is finished speaking, as we ran through, Shawnee's going to introduce you, and at that point you can share your screen.
Okay, is that format okay, or do I change this is the format it's gone into? I don't know how I actually change it to full screen. Is that better, or?
That's fine for me.
Yeah.
So let's not mess around too much with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you want to close that now.
Okay, close, stop sharing. Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. Okay, fine, excellent.
Excellent.
YouTube,
So
oh my gosh.
as
I've been watching Padraig Harrington videos on YouTube. That's all I've been looking at, yeah.
well, that's great. So we at 6:30 p.m. when we kick off, we will ask that everyone will show their video so that we can see your face.
Oh, and how do I do that then?
Down in the bottom left, it should say you should have an option to go start video.
Bottom left, start video. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, fine. Okay. I see it. There's a line gone through it at the moment. Yeah, fair enough.
Perfect.
Can I
Saying,
start it?
Senan, that you
Fail to
can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, because it's kind of start for fail to start the video camera. Please select another video camera in settings. The host has asked you to start your video. Start my
Here.
video.
There's Fiona. There's Shawnee.
Very good.
Okay.
Can see the sun behind Fiona as well.
Bit of a glare. I'll move over.
Okay, hang on a second now.
Was never an issue before this.
Start video. Oh, technical. Start video. It says cannot start video. Fail to start the video camera, please. Select another video camera in settings. Great. Okay.
Is your video camera covered, Aidan?
No. I actually tested it on WebEx and it worked fine.
Strange.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, settings. Where mute. Just think I call my IT person. See if I can.
Aidan, it should be down in the Mairead here. It should be down in the bottom left-hand corner. You should have a mute and start.
Start video. Okay.
Video settings.
You shouldn't have to go into the settings, Shawnee. It's just.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
Bottom left, yeah.
Alt B, it says.
What does it say?
Start. It has a line through the video. Like my video camera is embedded into my PC. So this reminds me of Croke Park last year when I gave a conference. I was all up, done and dusted, and I was 2 slides into my camera, and then it collapsed. So enable my video touch. I'll try this one. Mirror my video. Advanced video. Video rendering method. Okay. Video. Back.
Are you on a Mac, Aidan?
I'm on a HP. Video settings, it says. What comes up on video settings then? It says your package, high definition camera, original ratio, widescreen, original ratio, enable high definition, mirror my video, touch my appearance, meetings, advanced.
But you know, if you want to give, I don't know that video setting, but I wonder if you you have a bit of time, Aidan, before we come to you. If you want to, if Senan wants to mute you, then he can. You can make that call and see something there. So
the other thing, Aidan, if you wanted to try, just log out and log back in again and see what happens.
Okay, fine, I'll do it.
All right, don't worry, we'll get there. There's 4 minutes. You've loads of time. Fiona,
and we're live on YouTube.
Fiona, just how are
Great.
you?
Just out of curiosity, your video is also not working.
No, it's not. It's that I didn't.
Oh, I see.
When I saw the live on YouTube, I thought, oh, I should have done my hair.
And you knew we were going live on YouTube.
So, Fiona,
I'm sure it's lovely, Mairead.
No, I'm sure it's not. So just be cautious of when you move that your face blacks out.
Okay.
When you move to the side, but you both look great. Everything looks great, and Senan, you look great as well. Obviously, sorry.
Okay.
I should have said you all.
So I am actually once Aidan is back, and I'll take a look for him now. We will invite people in. Thankfully, as we are starting with Fiona, we have a few minutes for Aidan to try and sort this out. We will plow on regardless.
Hello, can you hear me again?
We can hear you.
Yeah, start video. There's a line through it. Alt video. Video, choose virtual background.
Okay, so Aidan, I would suggest that because you're making a presentation, this is not the end of the world, and the presentation is the focus, and you can be given the voiceover.
Yeah.
So we're going to kick off in 2 minutes anyway, because we have a hard start and a hard stop.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
So
Okay.
I'm going to mute everybody for now, and I'm going to bring you all back in at the appropriate times. To everybody watching on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to kick off in about 2 minutes, but thank you. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third Lean Business End webinar, What Smart People Are Doing. We are going to kick off in less than 1 minute. We're very grateful for you all being here. A little bit of housekeeping, we'll just stay on mute for the time being. Please note also that this event is being recorded. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third Lean Business Ireland webinar on what smart people are doing. Before we get started, I'd just like to do a little bit of housekeeping before we hand over to the host. You are all currently on mute. I would ask that you remain on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the chat function if you're in Zoom, or please use the chat function if you are on YouTube. I will be monitoring both and I'll be able to liaise your questions to the moderator. If you can also email me at senan.areen@ida.ie should you have any questions. Just to let you know, next week we're going to be hosting another webinar. It's going to be, the theme will be Beyond COVID-19 and how lean thinking can help your business stabilize, reset, and recover. So I would also encourage you to go to leanbusinessireland.ie. On the top right-hand corner, you can sign up to join your local regional network, and you'll get more information about events in the local region and nationally. So without further ado, I am going to hand you over to our host, Shani Devlin from AbbVie.
Thank you, Senan. You can hear me, I hope. That's perfect. So I'll start off. I suppose, firstly, I'd like to thank Senan and Lean Business Ireland for the opportunity to host this webinar for you all this week. A little bit about myself. My name is Shani Devlin. I'm the Operational Excellence Program Manager for a company called AbbVie in Ballytivnan and Sligo. Ballytivnan are a medical device site. We also have biologics capability at the moment. And there's a second site in Sligo, a drug product site in Sligo. And we also have a site in Cork. I'm also lucky enough to be the chair of the West Northwest Lean Network, which is a lean network for Sligo, Leitrim, Roscommon, Donegal, Mayo, and Galway. So all the good counties we got. It's an industry-led network, everything from biopharma companies, Coca-Cola, people like that, automotive. We also have some of the third level institutes on our committee and a number of the IDA, the LEOs, Enterprise Ireland, and Sligo Chambers of Commerce. So we're very well represented. I've been 5.5 years with AbbVie. I started off in operations, and a couple of years ago, they asked me to move into the OpEx section of the facility. So I've been there ever since. I suppose one of the things, or one of the reasons that I agreed to do this evening was I'm sitting here in my sitting room or in my TV room. I bet you a lot of you didn't think that you'd be sitting in your TV rooms or your sitting rooms conducting your business each week, but we're here. We're using Zoom. I would hazard that many people 12 months ago didn't know what Zoom was, and now we're conducting our lives through Zoom. And one of the things that I commented to a colleague of mine this week is that when COVID is gone, our lives and our working landscape will have irrevocably changed. We will be doing business in a different way. How we perform ourselves and how we look at things will be completely different. And I reckon that a lot of our employers and the companies that we work for will be looking at business very differently. Our work practices and our beliefs will change. And I think that this period of lockdown, I suppose even from my own personal point of view, has become almost the perfect storm from the point of view of operational excellence. It's a time of change, and we have to be able to keep up with that change. It's a time where companies will rise above this sort of thing through their continuous improvement efforts and through the efforts of operational excellence and lean thinking. It's also a time when companies will be preparing for the future and looking at future successes, and we'll see a lot of companies that will rise to the top of this. So this evening, I'm joined by two people to talk about how the smart businesses are coping during these perfect storm, or during this crisis. I hate to call it a crisis, and how they're engaging and maximising their remote teams. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Fiona Keogh from Analog. Good evening, Fiona.
Hi, Shawnee. Good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Fiona, I'd like to start off, after what I've said, this whole COVID-19 and been locked in the house and all that. And luckily enough, the two of us were complaining about the sun glaring on our screens. But can you tell us a little bit about where you work currently?
Oh, absolutely. So I work for Analog Devices International, or ADI as we are also known. I guess for anyone who's not familiar with ADI, I'll just maybe give you a brief background. So I guess at Analog Devices, we create technologies and solutions to essentially solve customers' problems. And through advancements in our technologies that sense, measure, and connect, I guess we're enabling our customers to intelligently bridge the gap between the digital and physical worlds. And I suppose an interesting fact is that every mobile phone call in the world goes through an ADI chip. So I guess in terms of some background in relation to the company, ADI was founded back in 1965. It's headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. We've got about 15,000 employees globally, with a presence in over 20 countries, about a portfolio of 45,000 products, 125,000 customers around the world. We're publicly listed on the NASDAQ as ADI. We've got 45 design centers globally, with a manufacturing presence in the US, Ireland, and the Philippines. ADI is a business-to-business supplier and has existed for more than 50 years under the stability of just 3 CEOs. So a really strong record there. I guess from the Irish perspective, and in terms of the Limerick campus, we've been operating in Limerick since 1976. And on the campus in Limerick, we've got both design and manufacturing capability. So about maybe 1,200 people play a critical role in our success there at the campus. And I think as well, for anyone who's familiar with semiconductor manufacturing, it's one of the most complicated processes in the world. At the site in Limerick, we operate 2 clean rooms. It's a 24/7 operation, highly automated. I think we're unique in the business in that we have 7,000 plus products running on 240 plus process variations in the same wafer fabrication facility. So that kind of sets the context for a busy operation indeed, working out of Limerick from our perspective.
tell me your role with ADI in Limerick. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're actually doing?
Absolutely. So from my own perspective, I am responsible for learning and organizational development. So I suppose what comes with that is responsibility for all areas associated with, I'll call it L&OD for short. And that, I suppose, relates to, anything from needs identifications to managing budgets, measuring impact, audit preparation and execution is also a large part of what I do. I also work very closely with the leadership team at the site to understand the strategy and I suppose then identify development needs aligned with the annual BMP. Those needs would be professional and technical and in both an internal and an external context. I do place significant focus on creating professional development pathways for employees, for example, in terms of apprenticeships and accredited learning. And that in turn then creates a sustainable internal talent pipeline for us. I'm also part of the site steering committee that drives enterprise excellence, and I play an active role in the CI Council and the Cultural Enablers Council that we have in operation at the site as well. I also spend a lot of time collaborating with third level institutions with the aim of building, I suppose, really strong industry, academia, partnerships. I also do a lot of work with a lot of the skill nets, for example, and the networks, particularly the Chambers and the AmCham. I'm also a member of the Limerick for Engineering Talent Group, which is a cohort of companies in the Midwest region and along the Atlantic corridor that come together to address common training and development needs and maybe identify how academia can support those needs. In terms of a side role for myself as well, I'm also involved as a lead auditor for labour and ethics for the Responsible Business Alliance. And that's a coalition dedicated to corporate social responsibility in global supply chains. So it's a busy role, it's a varied role, it's quite broad.
Definitely is.
Hugely interesting.
You're after mentioning an awful lot of facets to your role. There's an awful lot. I hate to say COVID, but I'm sure it is having a major impact on how, like, you're at home at the moment. Yes. Are you working remotely or are you going into work every day?
I'm doing a combination of both.
Right, okay. Yeah. And how has that impacted on ADI and how you're working?
I suppose really, the impact of COVID-19 from an ADI perspective, we are operational, and while the impact in terms of the operation, in terms of the manufacturing hasn't been too significant, yes, we still have experienced an awful lot of challenges. There's obviously some implications regarding employee availability to come to work, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And then we do have challenges as a result of self-imposed things like no overtime, no crossover of shifts, that type of thing, all in support of social distancing measures. I guess about maybe 85% of our workforce at the campus is currently working from home. That's a significant volume for us. It's definitely not something that we've experienced before. And I suppose we really won't know the efficiencies of that until some point in the future.
Right.
The one thing I would say is that we have a very proactive COVID-19 task force in place, making decisions daily based on HSE guidelines. And as a result of that, new processes are being devised and communicated to all employees. I think getting that message out to employees is critical in making people aware of those new procedures, of those actions being taken, making them aware of frequently asked questions and the range of supports that are available to employees. But I think most importantly, it's, I suppose, thanking employees for their contribution in the fight against COVID-19 and maybe articulating to them our thanks for the role that they're playing in all of this. In terms of my own role, if I look to what I've been, I suppose, asked to maybe step up and do, I suppose my own role now requires me to, for example, last week, making I suppose, a repository of videos, if you will, to share with employees so that when they have a sense of, when they're not at the site, they have a sense of what's going on, what changes have occurred. And when we do start the return to campus protocols, what they can expect to see that's different when they do come back to the campus. So it's very much just keeping them in the role and just making sure that they're fully engaged in everything that's happening.
Very good. Very, very busy. An awful lot going on trying to keep people engaged while they're off site.
Absolutely. And an awful lot of engagement and finding different ways to collaborate as well.
One of the things that you mentioned was your role in learning and development. How are you, during this COVID crisis, how are you making that work, or how are you making that successful at ADI?
I suppose really if I think about before COVID-19 and before it became a reality, I guess from my own perspective, we would have been well advanced in terms of our learning needs analysis. Our training plans would have been in place. And I know at ADI, we have a very high touch model when it comes to learning and organizational development. We put a lot of focus on face-to-face learning and coaching. We have a lot of multi-medium type programs as opposed to one-day type events and training sessions. I know the planning that it takes to execute a learning and development plan across multiple shift patterns. And when you're trying to deliver a professional and technical development plan in parallel with a health and safety plan, and also contending with holidays, shutdowns, end of quarter, and ever-changing business needs, you know, it does require some level of agility in terms of your approach. So I suppose what we've done to be successful during COVID-19 is really to remain focused on our plans in the short and the long term. I think during the initial weeks of, you know, people having to work from home, it was really about ensuring that employees had access to collaboration tools, but most importantly, that they know how to use them. And I think, you know, after that, it's about doing really what makes sense. And in some cases, you really do have to consider the learner and their environment. So you now have employees working from home, coming up to speed with the use of unfamiliar tools and platforms, maybe with small children to care for. Is the environment right for learning? And, you know, you now have parents trying to fit in work with PE with Joe, maths with Carl, story time with David Williams. The list is endless. Yeah. So, you know, I think from that perspective, you have to kind of do really what makes sense. And for us, we've asked the question, what's important? So when it comes to compliance training, a percentage of our compliance training can be delivered via our online platforms. Right. Obviously, there's a percentage that can't. So that's something that we really do need to work around to figure out how we can keep employees compliant, if you will. In terms of induction, we did our first ever virtual induction last week.
Right.
That worked really well. But yet again, you really won't know the impact of that until a later stage.
Right.
In terms of, is that something that we need to go back and revisit once we're back to normal operations? I think as well, you know, empowering employees to take charge of their own development and how they manage that, you know, encouraging them to leverage the learning platforms that we have. And we have a number of platforms that we use. You know, one of them would be LinkedIn Learning. I think all of our employees would have a license for LinkedIn Learning where they can avail of short courses. Equally so, there's the edX platform where employees can access longer type university accredited programs and can pursue those over a number of weeks. So in terms of kind of people addressing maybe their continued professional development, there's lots of options there. The one thing I think I've noticed as well is that employees are driving their own training via Skype with their own teams on very specific type topics. And that's very nice to see that happening, and it's very encouraging. We do a series of TED Talks ourselves. We used to host those once a month on a Friday evening, covering various topics. You'd have 2 presenters. We've now gone remote with those sessions and working very, very well indeed. Every year we would have had the annual technical conference for engineers that would have been held in Boston. That's now gone remote as well. And that's going to be delivered in the coming weeks via a virtual session. So, you know, I suppose all of these initiatives are all kind of focused on maintaining momentum and just making sure that, you know, things are still happening, that you're making efforts to engage with employees. I think as well, it's important to encourage innovation and collaboration. And one of the things that we've done is our hackathon team has launched a COVID-19 sprint challenge, where employees are encouraged to consider all problems associated with the pandemic and how ADI expertise could help to develop an impactful solution. So that was a really great way of getting people to come together to serve a common cause and a common purpose as well. And I think, the sign up for that has been terrific. So again, very encouraging to see people utilizing those issues. I think from an external perspective, the response of the vendors and networks has been really, really good. I think it's important to leverage your networks at this time. Now is not a time to be reinventing the wheel in a lot of cases. I see a lot of great initiatives coming through from the Limerick and Shannon chambers, from the ICBE SkillNets, and from a whole host of SkillNets throughout the country. The feedback there is very important, and I notice a lot of vendors are making recordings of webinars available in a repository type library, which I suppose is definitely assisting employees in being able to incorporate some type of professional development into their working day at a time that suits them. And that's really what's important, I think.
Very good, very good. I suppose there's a lot of people from a lot of different organizations, a lot of, it could be small to medium enterprises to larger companies, maybe even people that are working for themselves. Is there any tips that you would have for anybody, from the point of view of learning and development, that might help people at a time like this?
Yeah, I think, the things that I try to stay true to really, and that work for me is, I suppose engage is the first thing. I suppose now more than ever, learning and org development really does need to be seen as a partner to the business. And I think people in those professions are going to have to think outside the scope of their current role. And be agile. And an example of that is me making videos last week that will assist people in the return to campus protocol. So, I can add video director now to my talents, which is great. I think as well, it's important that I'm demonstrating ideal behaviors in line with our behaviors at the ADI campus in terms of sharing knowledge and helping to maintain momentum and build collaboration. I think staying aligned with your strategy is very important, anchoring yourself to the current business priorities and fundamentals. It's very easy to get caught up in all of the online offerings that are there at the moment. So again, it's just, you need to revisit that and just stay focused on that. I said already, no need to reinvent the wheel, leverage the resources that are out there. A lot of them are free in many cases. And I noticed there on LinkedIn only yesterday, Miriam O'Keefe, the programs director at the American Chamber, she shared some very interesting links in terms of, it's a hashtag give back directory. That's a great repository of websites where, you can access from an employee perspective and indeed from, a family perspective or a parent perspective as well. And the final thing I'd say is, go easy on yourself. Some things will work, some things won't work. But the main thing is to keep on trying and keep on being engaged.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much. Just before we move over to Aidan, I just remind everybody that if you've got any questions for Fiona, or if you've got any questions that come up from Aidan's presentation, that you can put them into the chat, and Senan is going through them all and he'll send them on to me and we can ask them at the end. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. I see some of them coming through already, Fiona. So at this point, thank you very much. I'd like to call on Aidan. I'm not sure if you got your video sorted out, Aidan, but Aidan is in DPS in Cork. Good evening, Aidan. Hello, Aidan.
Okay, I've had a couple of technicals. Can you hear me?
I can indeed,
yeah,
yes.
Okay. I can see a familiar face on the Zoom. Hi, Philippe, how are you? A colleague of mine. Nice to see you again. It's a strange new world, Fiona, and your presentation was very, very interesting and very enlightening indeed. Yeah.
So, Aidan, just to start, I know you have a presentation for us that you prepared, but the first thing I'd like you to do is just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about DPS in Cork, please.
Okay, so the DPS as a company are in the life sciences sector. We're an A&E company, and as you can see, I just put up a slide here. We offer a full engineering service. We're a full
No,
engineering
you'll have
service.
to share your screen, so you will.
Let me see if I can get this now. I'm having share screen. Okay, got it. Okay, so I hope you can see that then.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
So, okay. So we're, obviously there's animation in there that's gonna go mixed there, but I can remember the lines. So we're an A&E company working in the Irish owned, working in the life sciences sector, full engineering, project management, construction, and technical services. Working in the pharma and biologics area, and also in the advanced technology. That will fundamentally be with Intel, where we work in Ireland, US, and in Israel. So if I loop back to myself, I'm the head of operations for DPS in Ireland and UK. I'm PMP accredited. Did an engineering degree in the University of Limerick a long time ago when it was called NIHE. So the camera doesn't lie. I've a couple of years on the clock. 30 years in operation, 20 years in the pharma sector, and I've worked all around the world. Last year, when I presented up in the ILGC conference in Croke Park, I described myself as a novice. So I suppose I've gone from junior infants into senior infants in my lean journey. And in doing that, I've always looked to embrace innovation and really encourage people to look at the problem and identify better ways to reduce waste and get improvements as we work and operate in a very competitive environment. So that's a little bit about myself. And yesterday I was reading a book, and I came across this Japanese proverb that, in actual fact, is very pertinent to what Fiona was just mentioning earlier, and indeed what I'm about to talk to myself. A single arrow is easily broken, but not 10 in a bundle. And therefore, the group working as a team in a cohesive way, even in this remote functioning, if it's all coordinated and exercised properly, can get a really great synergy. So that's a little bit about DPS, which I don't want to dwell on. I'm sure some people on the call may be aware of us. Philippe is on the call. I saw him there. I wasn't expecting him there, so I've actually plagiarized one of his slides that he presented to me back in 2018. And I suppose for me, if I just kind of recount this story from a point of view of what COVID has done to us, which is that's very, very much tinged around, I just need to wind back the clock a little bit and explain. In 2018, I went to a site, and as the company had developed in the last 3 years, it has grown on almost 50% in size, and almost double that in turnover, twice that again in turnover. So now in 2019 we were hitting 200 million in turnover, and there was in that scaling and that timeline, we had our own growing pains. This was a significantly large project, and with it we were struggling to close out the transitions from construction and commissioning qualification. We were using the last planner tool, which is a tool we use very much in the construction realm, and indeed the commissioning and qualification. However, Sani, what happened was there was just poor handoffs, and as I referred to Philippe, he gave me this presentation in the slide deck, and literally we were down here doing a lot of documentation and a lot of emails to each other, and really we needed to get up that curve and operate back up here, two people on a board, or as like what we're doing at the moment, the video conference. I had a technical just before I started. I couldn't get my video conference to work, so just being able to see people is a great way of communicating as well. So how are we going to do that? There was lots of emails being issued, and I really felt, everybody had an email to say why something couldn't be done, and We work in a very collaborative environment. We've been very active in the Lean Forum for a long time. We have 35 green belts in the office and 2 black belts, and we really pride ourselves on the fact that we strive to be innovative and strive to challenge the status quo and see if there's a better way of doing it. And as we were struggling with this job, as I recounted, one of our contractors, which we work in that collaborative framework, Ardmac, invited me to meet Philippe, who's on this call, and he gave us a 2.5 hour lesson on Scrum. And like what you said just a while back, Fiona, just embrace it, take it on, and and learn as you go. As we walked back up from that training with Philippe, I decided that we're going to give this a shot. It all looked great, and the next day, as total novices, we just embraced the principles of what Philippe had imparted to us for the 2 hours, and we just went at it. We adapted, and I'm sure we broke every one of the rules, as you'll probably see in the next slide, when Philippe will probably look in horror at the fact that this is supposed to be a straight line, but because we had multiple guys in the teams, we just adapted it and we turned it into a nice Catholic Irish cross, and we just had activities on the go there. And that's a very important thing about putting a tool in and moving it through. I have found it greatly beneficial just to adapt. There is no real right way. Follow the basic principles. Certainly, it did improve the lean behaviors because with poor handoffs and struggling to get progress, what was happening was, respect, understanding, being compassionate, and even trust within the team, Sani, was starting to erode. I did watch with great delight as this started to re-cement itself and get more traction. And these problems that were really down in the weeds, up from down away from the last planner function, really were starting to get sorted, and with that was percolating up the way into the last planner, and now the boards were starting to get better KPIs because we measure on the construction site all our KPIs. And with that, then we are remembering, and Philippe, I'm a good student. I remembered you told me perfect the Scrum board with post-its, which is, as you can see in the top corner there. So before you go electronic. And moving on then in 2019, moving forward a calendar year, we had effectively a new project over on the west coast of Ireland, and we had a complex commercial and technical bid analysis to complete. Unfortunately for us, we had multiple stakeholders, and in a very low-tech way, we didn't realize that we were we would get as accomplished in let's say electronic boards. But what we were doing, and when we initially kicked it off, was taking a photograph, issuing it out to everybody, and then everybody was saying, move that board into the doing, or move it into the door, not that one, no, the one on the left, one on the right, and it was all very cumbersome. We had multiple stakeholders, as I said, in the Cork, Dublin offices and on the site. So revisiting Philippe's notes, I took the jump and said it's time to move back into a remote or an electronic Scrum board, which basically meant the stakeholders in multiple locations could now dial in. And going back to the principle of the bundle of arrows, we could be strong together as a team and give the inputs and dial back out, because some of us only had part-time input into that project. We had that process to do in 5 weeks. I'm not going to go through the principles of Scrum here. I'm just going to talk about in very high level about the tools, but we had a kind of that Scrum set up for 5 weeks to do that task, and we broke it down logically into 5 distinct sprints. And we just approached it following the guidelines. What did we do since the last huddle? What are we going to do till the next huddle? And what are the roadblocks? And and we started, as you can see below, we started to put in verify, constraints, backlog, for future sprints, and the functionality of the electronic board allowed us to be more efficient. Little did I know, and I could sit here and say I saw COVID coming. I didn't. I just want everybody to know that. Like everybody else, we sat here and thought, when someone said, "Oh, there's a couple of people, there's a virus in China," it seemed a long time ago at the back end of last year that someone started talking about, Wuhan, and the couple of people from Ireland, would they get repatriated or not? And here we are now, all in their studies or down in their sunrooms or kitchens, all socially isolated and distanced accordingly. So we were lucky, and I could say visionary, but I'll be honest, one of the principles of Lean is to be humble, and I will say we were lucky in the fact that we had this project, and therefore we perfected the art of an electronic board. Now in our work, we're engineering, we're constructing, qualifying, and procuring equipment. So there's a lot of teamwork in play. So therefore, remote working was going to be a challenge because, as people would have seen, a lot of Skype calls getting into your Outlook calendar, a lot of emails coming to you, and sometimes you're saying, "Is he or she just copy me just to verify that I'm at my desk and working away diligently?" And what I did then was, from that 2019 project, I realized that we were now had moved up the curve. Philippe would have been proud of us, and we needed to get qualified Scrum Masters to really percolate this down all the way into the organization. And that's what we did. We have 3 Scrum Masters in play. We have about 35 green belts in the organization and 2 black belts, which allows the whole culture of the company to operate under the Lean principles and with proper Lean behaviors, allowing people at the board, because as you all know, when you go to a face-to-face meeting, there are the dominant talkers and then there are the quiet people. But the great thing about the boards was, no matter what your personality type is, you do get your slot. You get your 2 minutes to say, what did I do since the last board? What am I going to do until we have the next board meeting? And more importantly, what are my roadblocks so that I can actually clear the runway and get the work done? There are no Skype calls. We try to reduce the amount of emails and get better efficiency. And that's really the principles. Now, I'm not going to, there's loads of tools out there for ourselves. There's Office 365 Planner and there's Trello or 2 that we're familiar with. And they're very much dictated by the client. One client uses 365, but most of the other clients we're using at the moment allow us to pick our own one. And at the moment, most of our teams are comfortable with the function and tools of Trello. The principle for those that have or haven't used it, Scrum, it's around the principles of rugby and the fact that you must scrummage as a team, which again goes back to my the bundle of 10 arrows are stronger than one. And it's pretty much your backlog to do, doing and done. And literally, what are you planning to do? What are you doing and what are you done? And the boards have allowed us as well to have that Skype call for 15 minutes and say, I have a roadblock here. Can you free me up? There's no email saying, which you don't get to, and delay the whole process and the efficiency of it. So with that in mind, I have found we've kept the tier board structure. So on some of the larger projects, we've tier board 1 where the disciplines come together. They elevate that then back up to the suite team leads, who elevated it then back up to the management, and then in an interface into the clients. And we've kept that structure very much at the tier board level. It has done enormously well, and again, I could say visionary. It wasn't. It was an accident, an accidental coincidence that we actually moved over to that board because of that project in 2019. But we saw the benefits of it, and it has now kind of minimized some of the disruption to your own individual Outlook calendar. And I can't tell you how many boards are actually working in DPS at the moment. I just know the 3 Scrum Masters have actually percolated that down to whoever needs to see it, because as I said earlier, our business is very much around teams working together, and those boards allow the team to meet, organize themselves, do their work, and then come back for the next board meeting. Ensure the behaviors are aligned to all the attendees. That's very important. A consistent focus on why you've set up Scrum in the first place, and the Scrum, the purpose of the Scrum, and the owner of that, and having him engaged. So this was the book that I bought, the art of doing twice the work in half the time. When I first saw it, I said it's a bit too catchy, but the principles are in there, and it's an easy read. For me, the findings, what did I find about it? As I said, the courage, as Fiona has intimated, just to kind of look look at something, see does it offer any value, and move forward with it. Very important. Have the courage to fail. You know, not everything is going to work, and revisit it. And learn as you go. It's not as if you need to be a subject matter expert in the area. And invest in the training. You know, make sure that there's some anchor guys in there that are helping facilitate the right methodology now in running a Scrum board. And what I have found is that some of the lean tools, it could be just with the processes of how people currently work, is the fact the higher up the tier board, the harder it is to actually keep those tier boards going. The newer they are, the younger they are, and they're happy for change, they're happy to innovate. Whereas some people are embedded in the old ways of actually executing, and moving them and getting it to consistently stay with the board, Sani, has been the challenge. So I suppose, don't wait for a crisis. Innovate and move. Be agile and move back on. I'm not going to go through the theories of the sprint because I prefer to kind of go through and help with the questions here on that. But I did come across another quote to actually close out. The strength of the group is in the strength of the leaders. I love quotations. They offer some enlightenment. And that's the guy from Vince Lombardi. He was a serious operator, I gather, in the American Football League, and had a serious win record.
Very first NFL coach to win the championship. Yeah,
correct.
The name so, yeah, excellent.
So really, to everybody out there, quite happy to take some questions. I would also say, Sani, like Philippe is on the call, so I feel a bit like the student here. But from a point of view of the Irish operations here, if anybody wanted to come on the call, come on, and DPS are quite happy to organize a 1 hour kind of, get to know a Scrum board. If you wanted to email it to Karen McAvoy, KAREN.McAvoy, I'll send it back onto you, Sani. You can send it out to the distribution list. We'll set up a WebEx, and I'll have one of our Scrum masters just step people through the principles of running a Scrum board remotely. Obviously, with the lockdowns that's currently in play, and given that they're going to disrupt the amount of people that can all return to their offices, and the fact that we'll still have to abide by social distancing, we're quite happy to help people out in that, and we can arrange that next week if that's.
I see several people that are willing to take you up on that. So
okay.
You could be inundated, so you could.
No, that's okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
You earlier on, I saw a couple of the questions coming in, but it was going through my mind because I wouldn't be as familiar with Scrum as a methodology.
Yeah.
And you put up the 2 books and that, but how did you percolate that down? Did you run a site-wide program or? When
I was doing the presentations in Croke Park, I was just going to answer honestly. We just bootlegged it. We just got on and said we knew enough. We knew enough to be dangerous and enough to be sensible. And we literally kind of I bought 10 copies of the books. I said to the lads, read them over the weekend, and we cracked on it. So we started it, I think, on a Thursday, and by the time we came back on Monday, there was an air of confidence by the 10 guys who read the book, and we just got on with it, Sani. We didn't really. How we percolated that down then was the fact that we said, well, we need to get this more serious, because we introduced it because I did see it immediately as a way of actually sorting out those granular problems that were really impeding the progress on the project, to kind of get guys around the table and to respect each other and understand the durations. The second thing after that, I said, well, look, we need to get serious on it. So we took 3 guys who were the most enthusiastic, and we got them trained, and then we just let them loose and said, we canvassed it out to everybody and said, anybody who wants to set up a Scrum board, these guys are here. As I said earlier, when I kind of went through the presentation, I actually don't know how many Scrum boards are working in DPS Cork at the moment. If people want them set up, they just contact one of the 3 guys and they set them up. I know myself, I get invited to a couple of boards, and it's great to see, because they're on HR, they could be on Cork operational issues, it could be on a specific project item, and straight away you get in and get out very quickly, rather than sit there typing an email and typing back a response.
And you were saying that you've gone by necessity, a lot of them are now electronic.
Yeah.
So you're maintaining them, and people can log into them now remotely. You said almost by accident you had them in place before COVID. But do you find that that's helping the organisation, that's...
Oh, very much so. So obviously, like one of the boards that we set up with the hit of COVID, we have obviously a monthly reporting calendar where you kind of got to review each project, do the spent earned on it, check the health of the project and the issues, look at the financials of it, the schedule. And so what we did was we literally set up a Cork operations reporting board, because there's so much interchange between so many people. You were looking at gigabytes of emails that would be moving between Skype calls, etc., etc. So now that, but those guys, we meet every other day on that board, and the monthly reporting calendar was reported out on plan based on the fact that the Scrum board was set in place. Our Scrum, the principles of Scrum are very simple. You know, you do have a Scrum master. That's very important. If you, for those of you that are familiar with rugby, you have the Scrum itself, and I suppose the Scrum master is really the Scrum half who puts the ball in, controls the play on the board. The owner then sits and he's the guy who wants the output out of it, and that's fine. And for me personally, those guys are now literally saying, I need to set up a board, and they become the Scrum master with a view of educating the team enough for one of those guys to enthusiastically take it on. And they have a link back to the Scrum, the qualified Scrum master, to ask any questions or clarifications as they need.
Have you many people at the site, Aidan?
So I'm responsible for Ireland. So there's about 270 odd in the Cork operation, and we've about 230 in the Dublin operation. So for me, what has been great is Scrum boards. Again, Philippe is getting his fourth reference here. We moved the boards from Cork to Dublin, and they are in electronic Scrum as well. Like as Fiona has said, with online learning, we've actually been able to impart that back into Dublin office as well. So it's been an outstanding success for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I see lots of reference to Philippe's book there, and Philippe and the training and all that. And I think Mairead is looking to try and set something up with Southeast Lean Network and Lean Business Ireland. So you might have gigabytes of emails tomorrow morning when you open them up.
Oh yeah. No. I mean, in fairness, Ardmac, I should mention him with Jason Casey, who was on Lean Construction Ireland. He gave us the invite. He held 5 places for us. Philippe will be delighted to know all those 5 who attended that are all committed Scrum players now. I am myself. And for me personally, it was just to go off and get Scrum masters. That's very important, to kind of get guys that know the play to help us. You know, you don't need to be a Scrum master yourself. You just need to be a knowledgeable participant.
Fiona said earlier on, and I'm conscious that I want to go back to Fiona for it, but she said earlier on, I think 80% of your employees were working remotely, Fiona?
At 85%, yes.
Aidan, would you have a similar number that are working remotely currently?
Yeah, so we would have engineering, procurement, construction management, and qualification. So all of the engineering in its entirety are working from home. 3 of the 5 sites we're on are shut. So we would have something in the order of about, of the 270, we would probably have higher than that. We probably have almost about maybe 85 or 90% of the people working from home. Yeah.
I see we also have a question there, and I'm interested to hear it. The response from either of you, or have you seen any changes to people's working hours? You know, we talk about flexi time. In recent years, things have changed a little bit, and companies are, tolerant of stuff like this. But do you see that? Are you seeing people starting earlier or finishing later in the day? Or Fiona,
if you want to say.
Sorry, either.
Yeah, so I think people are really having to figure out how to make the day work best for them. I mentioned earlier, a lot of people are at home with small kids. So, they have to find a way to figure out how to integrate the work into that type of environment as well. I've noticed myself that, yes, there has been, there's greater tolerance on the part of the organization, because, they empathize with people in that situation. They understand that there needs to be a level of flexibility. And that then, I suppose, allows us to figure out how we continue with standard work. So how do we make sure that work continues that needs to be done? You know, and certain things in terms of, you know, the leader walk on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock still goes ahead, and it goes ahead remotely. Huddles in terms of department huddles, they still go ahead, but it's at a time that might better suit all parties. So it's about figuring out what works for both. And once you get down to the conversation and the nitty-gritty of it, it's a very easy thing to make happen.
You mentioned SkillNet earlier on, Fiona. Do you use SkillNet much for this training that you're doing or delivering?
So we, before COVID-19, absolutely, we liaise in great depth with a lot of the SkillNets, and we leverage a lot of their offerings and their expertise as well. And since COVID-19, I think the SkillNet's response has been terrific in terms of the programs that they're putting in place. And what I've noticed with the SkillNets is that they're very tuned in to the needs of people. So for example, their initial set of offerings would have been around how to use Zoom and how to use it effectively, for example. Now we're sort of moving to a stage where we might be looking at return to campus protocols and how can they assist in those elements as well. And I think they're very cognizant of the smaller types of organizations as well, and how they can offer out learning and continued professional development to the employees of those companies as well.
So to yourself, Aidan, are you finding that the working day is different now under these circumstances?
Yeah, we did, and we a lot of uncertainty with people, and I wanted to share one slide if I could. What we did was we did a leadership training workshop to let people know it's okay to be to be uncertain in this time. Just to see if I can get this screen back up now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Share. So this, and the shock of this is it. We're all at home. The denial of it, frustration. And the big D word, depression. In the experimental of how you're going to re-engage the decisions, then we felt as a company we needed to embrace that, because you can sit and say as leaders we needed to impart this to the leadership team and let them know that all of these emotions were fine, and as this animated slide goes, as you go through the denial, frustration, depression, and then a game change again, COVID maybe comes back strong, or a pod comes back up, and you go back down the curve and think, will this ever be over? And you can be climbing up that curve and go back along. So we took our leadership team again for quite away from the principles of Scrum. We said it's okay to feel down or frustrated or have denial, or look and say, how can I lead this team and make sure that I can deliver this project? And now look at retention of staff, all the issues that come with the responsibility of being a leader. And we did this internal training workshop remotely, and just like Fiona, we found now push comes to shove, the remote training has been very well received. And I think there was a big sigh of relief when people said it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to feel low and moody and lacking energy, and we went through the principles of remote working, keeping a routine, and we explained all that, to the fact that you must get up, you must go like you're actually going to work and do what you'd normally do, not sit, it's not a PJ day, that's very important that you function, you try and function as close to what normal is. Now, we all know we don't know what normal is going to be, but it's very important. And this is an extract out of a slide deck we gave to all the leadership teams, so that, and that was imparted to them for them to, and we're now going down to the second tiers and third tiers to let people know that it's okay to go through all of these emotions as you deal with the uncertainties of because the news is hard to listen to. It's COVID-19. We're into now a deep recession, and you're uncertainties, and it's just cascades. And what you're trying to do is not avoid the real emotional feelings that happen. Forget about the Trello boards. They're all the functional efficiency of trying to get your job done. But it's okay to kind of sit there on that board and maybe not feel that you're 100%. And that was very important for us to do that training as well.
Yeah, I think, Senan, you mentioned earlier on at the start that next week we're going to start talking about how we get back, you know, or how we get to some sort semblance of normality. And I've heard Fiona mention a couple of times, you know, your protocols for getting back to work and all that. I suppose personally myself, I feel that like the companies, you know, the company that I've worked for have been very good. The number 85% and higher working from home, you know, companies are trying to accommodate people, but it's now that balancing act. I had one question, and it's a general question to the people that have dialed in. We've already spoken about this in my own employment. What happens to all the holidays that people have accrued that they're not exactly going to be keen to take because Spain and France are going to still be on a lockdown? Are we going to be in a situation where people are going to have copious amounts of holidays later in the year, all trying to get them, you know? So it's definitely a different working environment that we're going to be returning to. So it'll be interesting to see next week what Senan and the speakers that they've got on next week. I don't really have any other questions unless there are any other wrap-up points that either yourself or Fiona have.
No, I'm good. As I said, we're quite happy to, in this time, to offer out that training, Sani. And you know, if I'll email you the lady's name will receive the.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think
we'll set up a WebEx next week to do that training. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because I can see a lot of people, there's a lot of interest in it. I know Senan has taken all the notes, and we'll be reaching out to people after this. Fiona, have you any last words before we finish up?
Only to say a huge thank you to yourself, Shoni, Aidan and Senan, and to everybody else who joined the call tonight. Absolutely delighted that so many people could take part. So thank you.
Yeah,
and likewise, I'll say thank you for having the opportunity to present and to catch up with some old friends there that are on the call. It's been excellent. So
free advertising here all evening, Aidan.
Yeah, thanks very much. Always, thank you. Thanks very much,
folks. I'd like to thank Aidan and Fiona, our panelists this evening. I'd like to say a special word of thanks to Senan, who runs a very tight ship, so he does. And Lean Business Ireland. I'd just like to remind everybody that the recording of this will go online probably sometime tomorrow, and it'll be posted on the Lean Business Ireland website. We would encourage that people reach out to the likes of Senan or myself or Aidan or Fiona around some of the points that have come up today and the stuff that you're interested in. If people didn't get the names, I'm sure, Aidan, if you can share any of the parts of the presentation, people would be delighted. I know there's a couple of questions about that. And don't forget to look at your regional networks, which are a fantastic recourse and support to people at the moment, the likes of SkillNet and the Chambers of Commerce and that, Lean Business Ireland, the LEOs and that, and your own regional networks. And join your own regional networks and you'll see the benefits of them. Hopefully, in the next while, we'll get back to doing site visits and we can go down and see Aidan, or we can call down to Limerick to see Fiona, and we can actually see these scrum boards in action. That's all I've got for you this evening, folks. I'd like to say thanks very much myself personally. It's been very, very interesting. I've taken copious notes, Aidan. I didn't want to keep lifting up the phone to take a photograph of the screen.
No, I'll send the presentation on, and I said feel free to contact me, and we'll arrange that WebEx, and we can work on from there. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Fiona's the same. But I'll take whatever questions I'll forward on my email. If anybody has any questions, they can forward them on to me. Yeah.
That's brilliant, folks. Thank you very much. Senan, thank you. Will I hand over to you?
Yeah, hi, yes, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate the time. I was kind of put there on the hop. Please do come back next week, as we will be doing the next one. And as mentioned, it'll be beyond COVID-19, how lean thinking can help your business stabilize, reset, and recover. And until then, best of luck, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, Aidan. Good evening, folks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.